We are live. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. Welcome to another live show from the Ink. I'm so excited to be doing another one of these with Ruth Ben-Ghiat, professor of all things authoritarianism and fascism and America 2025ism. Um, Glad to see people jumping in. As always, if you're new, tell us in the chat where you're coming from geographically right now, but also psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, what have you. Ruth, I'm so happy to be talking with you about such terrible things.
Yeah, it's great. I have to say, when we did this last time, and this happens every time, but I felt we talk about grim things, but I felt better afterward.
Yeah, I
And
know. I did too.
yeah, it's like from our conversation and then being together with everyone. I think I always tell my own subscribers when we do our weekly gatherings that we're going to get through this being together and being in conversation. And yeah, I wanted to tell you that because I really felt all afternoon I felt like kind of more solid, you
I,
know.
I feel the same thing, and I think a lot of people do, and I got that feedback from a lot of people also. And I think it's partly that this kind of era invites you to be against, and it can make you forget to be for, and to
Yeah.
even spend any time and energy articulating and modeling what you're for. And I this is to me this is a space where we're doing both those things. Um, we're
Yeah.
talking about things worth being against, and we're also talking about and modeling things worth being for.
Yeah, and I think although I have, been studying fascism and dictatorships for so long, I did not grow up in a dictatorship. I grew up in Southern California. Um,
The opposite of a
so
dictatorship.
so we also looking out at the sea, which was like possibility, and I think a lot of us are maybe rereading or hearing about ideas of people who did grow up. Like Hannah Arendt talked a lot about the closing down of possibility, but especially also internally, how you start feeling lonely. That because dictatorships and just repressive environments, they want to pit us against each other and make you distrust everybody as well as institutions, not know who you can trust. There's informers. Think of the Stasi in East Germany. So it could be fascist, could be communist, but I think it leaves you feeling very lonely. And so she talked a lot about that. And so the antidote is being together.
I love
Well,
that. I love that
yeah.
so much. Um, so I wanted to ask you about the a kind of a day that will live in infamy. Um, uh, Friday, the Oval Office meeting. Um, Obviously, a lot's been written about it. People have been talking about it endlessly since then. Um, and I wanted to start with a friend of mine texted me something that really crystallized it for me. She said, as uh, American, but she's comes from a Polish Jewish family, including people who've lost people in the Holocaust, and she said, as someone of that background who found safety, whose family found safety and refuge and a new life in the United States, to watch that moment on Friday really felt like not just the end of a one relationship or the end of even an era, but the end of something really, really fundamental in what the United States has meant, has been, lives it has created and enabled on a grand scale and a historical scale. I wonder if you could just reflect on Friday in that kind of bigger context.
Yeah, you know, the the fact that the Oval Office was used for such an operation was shocking, right? Um, but January 6th was shocking that the Capitol was assaulted and people defecated on it on January 6th, and it's all part of the same thing. Like literally to take down democracy and use the spaces, the temples of our democracy, to install its opposite. Um, And so anybody who stands for democracy has to be discredited, scorned, demeaned. And you know, Trump's been doing this for a long time. He's been doing it to Zelensky for a long time, because Zelensky is like the thorn in the side. He's not supposed to be like this. How dare he know exactly how to respond? How dare he know how to perform for the cameras in a way that is pro-democratic? They're not used to this. They're very arrogant, and they've been able to think about, like, they've been able to get the very powerful GOP with senators and people to just like fold. So here comes Zelensky. But this started earlier, where I never forget, in 2017 in May, Trump hosted in the Oval Office. These two, what I'm about to say goes together with Friday. He hosted the Russian ambassador to the US and the Russian foreign minister, with only a task photographer present, a Russian state photographer present. And they were yakking it up and smiling. And this was a photo opportunity, which the communists, and now whatever they're called, in Putin, they're very image conscious. They know how to do these things. And this was a photograph that was supposed to kick off the Russian capture of the Oval Office. But he wasn't allowed. It didn't work because Trump didn't have enough power to really to do that back in 2000, his first administration. And then the Russia investigation came in. So besides what we can say about Vance's behavior and Trump's bullying and Zelensky's skill, I'm very obsessed with this, with what Trump said at some point, because this was new discourse and it tells us something about him. Um, he said, "Let me tell you, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He had to suffer through the Russia hoax. He went through a hell of a lot with me." And to me, who studies regimes, it sounded like one of these self criticisms and confessions that you have to make in communism, especially if you displeased the state. You had to go public. Sometimes they'd haul you on TV in Gaddafi time, and you had to do a self criticism. So it wasn't just with me, like together, it's that I caused Putin a hell of a lot of problems. And what this tells us is this is why
You
they're
almost
acting
read
so
it as a little
quickly.
bit of an
Yeah.
unstated apology from him in a way.
That's what it was. And that's new, because Trump is either Mr. Bombast, I alone can fix it, or he's Mr. Victim at the hands of the deep state. This was new, and it was quite revealing. And he's very careful what he says, but this told us a lot about the nature of his. He feels pressure to perform for Putin, he has responsibilities to fulfill. And that's why they're doing the things that they're doing so fast. That's how I
I want
read it.
I want to. That's so interesting and terrifying. So I want to get into that. I think over the last few years, when we think about an American autocrat allying with other autocrats, Putin, but also others, or when we just talk more generally about autocrats around the world, kind of broing out and connecting with each other, it seems to me there's a few different theories of why and how that happens. And in different cases, it might be different things. It might be a confluence of these things. But I want to run these by you in this case of Trump doing Russia's bidding. So one source of glue is ideological affinity. These are leaders who have a view of the
Yes.
world that is similar. They actually like the idea of authoritarianism. They read the same books, and not in Trump's case, but they have an actual worldview that is the same. An Erdogan and a Putin probably
Hmm.
look at the world in a lot of the same ways. Um, Another connection is money, financial, right?
For sure.
Anne Applebaum's book Democracy Inc. talks about Autocracy Inc. talks about the kind of grift aspect of it. You've written about this yourself, and then a third is the kind of more compromise kind of thing, which is a narrow, in a way, it's just like, no, 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 this person's an asset. This person they have something on him, they have a dossier. And you could imagine that it's some combination of these three things. But
Yeah.
I wonder, when you look at this now, How do you think about those three explanations and the relative weights of them now, given what you're seeing?
Well, it didn't surprise me because I had written a piece for the New York Times on January 30th. It came out, and it was about Tulsi Gabbard, but it was about Trump too. And in it, I pointed out that Trump, and I've known this for a long time, he truly has internalized long ago a view of the world that sees democracies as hostile actors, and they get in the way of the things that autocracies want to do. And so ever he's there's since Putin invaded Ukraine, there's been several times where he blamed the US um on for making Putin. He said he had to go in, meaning he had to invade Ukraine because was like Biden was like making things difficult by supporting Ukraine's bid to join NATO. So in all cases, and Tulsi Gabbard also echoes these things. The point is that these people have internalized a view of geopolitics where the problem is democracies, and they're getting in the way of autocracies. Right, they're right, they're legitimate aspirations to expand in the world and do things, and they're even victims. So that's where, like, that Putin went through so much. He's the victim here because we're making it difficult for him. So what my view of what's happening now, and with all the policies that have already and changes already passed, I have my latest Substacks about this, is that Trump is going to be solving the problems for Putin. He's solving Putin's problems. And how is he doing this? Two ways. Um, to dial back or erase, really, when possible, America's footprint in the world, whether it's a hard power footprint or all the aid, all the humanitarian assistance that made people actually feel good about America. So, where are they going immediately? They wreck US aid. And there was a false report that a military base, a US military base, had been closed in Greece. But I think that will happen because they're trying to reduce the footprint. So that's one way, and that's the outward facing. The other is that, and this is so scary, it's like the walls of the national security and intelligence fortress have to go down to let Russian influence circulate. So they've already, yes, like yesterday was the news that Pete Hegseth ordered the US Cyber Command to not investigate any Russia threats. The FBI disbanded the Foreign Influence Task Force. um, Trump also disbanded this thing called capture task force to specifically block the activities of Russian oligarchs. So you get the picture.
Wow.
Yeah. So you block. So you kind of go after the footprint of America abroad, and you create a power vacuum that Russia and China, frankly, can fill. And
So
then at
you,
home,
to
you
summarize it,
let
yeah.
sorry, you just let me just at home you let Russian influence and money circulate. And there's the one of the connection to the one of the things, that the money part, because for many, many decades it's been suspected. Adam Schiff talked about this many years ago. Suspected that that the Trump organization was laundering money through real estate for Russians.
What I don't understand is, okay, so you have a president who's trying to do all this, but all the things you just described um, involve lots of people, including people in the national
Yeah.
security apparatus, going along with this effort to make, as Senator Chris Murphy put it the other day, the White House an arm of the Kremlin. Um, what is your understanding of why ordinary middle management and senior management people in the American national security apparatus, who presumably the Russians don't have anything on and are not particularly ideologically
Yeah.
aligned with Russia, why are they going along with it?
Well, we'll see if they go along with it, right? We don't. It's early. They've only been there for 6 weeks. Feels like 6 months, or for some people 6 years, right? Um, um, can you imagine? Can I make a just digression that Franco was in office for 36 years and Pinochet for 17 years? This is like we're getting how exhausting. Um, but to go back to your question, we don't know. I would never want to say that everybody like for example in the FBI there's a lot of they're very upset. There was a lot of protest with what the Trump administration was trying to do to get rid of people. It's we can't say that all of them are going to be captured or go along with it. Maybe they'll be purged, they'll be fired if they don't. But that's an interesting question. What we do see is the Republican Party that has has people like Rand Paul and other people who are historically pro Putin. And then, but look at Marco Rubio. You know, everyone will always remember that picture of him sitting, the expression on his face. And he was supposed to be, you know, Mr. Anti-communist and anti-authoritarian, and now look what he's doing. um, so the party sometimes can set the tone for the government, and they're not. If we leave them to set the tone, they just seem to be completely capitulating.
Yeah, what struck me so much watching that meeting on Friday was it really just felt like a launch party for the next America that they're trying to usher in, you
Yeah,
know? And what makes me sad to say is that it felt coherent in a way. It like I sort of believe like it felt like that is a real parallel country that I think they're trying to bring in, which is calculating and selfish and mean spirited and doesn't really care about democracy and is comfortable outsourcing authority to a dear leader because of fear and anxiety and you know pr- delusions about progress and it just feels like I don't know, it didn't just feel like a spat between 2 people. It felt like the announcement of, "This is who we are now. This is the new
yeah.
us."
Yeah, that's a very good way to put it. And it is a coherent worldview, and it's a worldview that is composed of transnational talking points. It's a worldview that's shared and has been propped up and developed while Trump was out of power. Again, they used their time beautifully while they were out of power to shape up this narrative world and the connections with Orban. And it's not just, we're talking about like maybe foreign policy things, but also immigrations, the same great replacement theory. It's all the same stuff. Maloney is citing it. She's on Ukraine. She's more pro Ukraine, but she's pro autocrat with all her racist and crazy demographic views. So these are transnational talking points, and there's a lot of money. Like the Heritage Foundation isn't just a national foundation, it's got extensive international ties with other right wing think tanks and foundations and organizations all over the world. And Orban tried to make himself like a hub of this, and he founded new international organizations. So these this worldview, they've been, in a sense, they've just as we had a shadow government for the internal stuff, the purges of civil service, and that was Project 2025 and Heritage, and they were waiting to go. They were training people, and they've been able to do things fast because they were waiting to go. There's been a period of waiting. It's as though they were waiting for Trump to come back, and then they were ready for this stuff as well. Like Richard Grinnell, who was in the news for being the one to suggest that the charming Tates come back and become, somehow American heroes or useful to America. He was traveling. He wanted to be Secretary of State, and he didn't get it, but he was traveling incessantly around all autocracies, um, including Venezuela, to kind of spread the love and spread the doctrine. So it was like they were all waiting for the US to come in and complete the chain in a way. That's
Yeah.
why the coherent, it was good that you used the word coherent.
I wonder, give us your sense of where things are with the Elon Musk phenomenon. His consolidation of power seems to be accelerating. He's in cabinet meetings now, apparently using Marine One, while they still have the sleight of hand of, oh, he doesn't even actually work here. He doesn't actually run the things that he supposedly runs. Um, what do you make of his position now? How do you think that aspect of this is going?
It's a total nightmare. Um, it's like that's the new part, because the other things being done, they do cohere to a certain playbook. And indeed, all this, by the way, all the stuff with Trump and Putin, um, Berlusconi and Putin had the same deal going. And I start my book. If you open Strongman, you'll see the prologue is Berlusconi and Putin, and Berlusconi became the mouthpiece of Putin. And anyway, so a lot of this is, but the Musk stuff is new, and it's astounding that nobody's stopping him, that he's this private citizen has been able, he's also holding meetings with world leaders. And I have a piece coming out on Wednesday, and this is one of these emblematic photographs. He's meeting with Modi at Blair House, which is the presidential guest house, so it's an official president connected space. And on one hand, and so they had two chairs with the two leaders, except who elected him, I do not know. Um, and on one side of the room are Modi's like entourage, his advisors, and they have suits on, the usual. Guess who's on the other side of the room? His kids, Musk's toddlers with two of their mothers. And so this is like completely bizarre and crazy. And it shows where that I think, Musk is also, he's trying to rob blind the government, and he's destroying every entity of the government that's investigating him. So you have the corruption angle. That's massive. It's truly massive corruption. But then he's trying to make a mockery of the US. He has this like, um, we're not supposed to swear on here, but
No, you can.
um,
You absolutely can.
well,
The FCC does not regulate this.
he's like a shit poster, and now he's, I don't know what you would say, he's a a shit something, a shit everything. So he's like shit posting government diplomacy by bringing again, it's coming out Wednesday, my piece with that's the photo. I As soon as I saw it, I've been obsessed with this photo. I analyze images. I wrote a book on film, for those who don't know. I'm obsessed with analyzing images. And so again, you have two leaders, one who's not supposed to be there, one half normal. You have people with suits and briefing books for Modi, and you have toddlers probably peeing in their diapers, and that's the side of the US government. So he's just like shit posting all of us, and profiting from it in the meantime.
Okay,
It's just
but
terrible.
but help me with this, because I didn't see that image, but I saw the cabinet meeting. This guy, dressed all in black, with his hat,
Shit master,
standing
somebody's
up.
saying.
Yeah, I like that. Well, here's what I don't understand, and maybe you can help me understand this.
Eh,
I understand there's different ideological tribes. I understand a lot of people voted for Donald Trump and like him. I get all of that. But my read of the country that I know and have spent almost all of my life in is that in the middle of, Pennsylvania, or in the middle of Nevada, or in the middle of Wisconsin, or in the middle of Florida, people's kind of tolerance of a South African born gazillionaire standing in their cabinet room dictating terms, um, getting into their social security, getting into their IRS, would really piss people off, would piss a lot of normie, non-ideological people off, would piss a lot of conservative people off. That would be my
mm-hmm,
expectation.
mm-hmm.
And I understand there's a media bubble, and there's, but I think generally a lot of people know that this is happening. And it just is not causing the reaction that I would imagine it to cause. If you asked me to, if you described a scenario for me where a South African billionaire was sort of just running the United States government, my prediction about what would happen is really different from what is happening. How do you explain that?
Well, you thought that there would be mass protests, or the Democratic
Yeah, I
Party?
just
What
think
did you
like
think?
I don't. I could completely see how people would elect a Donald Trump. I find it much harder to understand how people in Western Pennsylvania are like, yeah, this unelected Musk guy should absolutely be in charge of my mom's Social Security. That I just find harder to model in my mind. What is the tolerance for that? Where is that coming from? It doesn't feel very American to me.
No, I don't know if it's a tolerance. Just, I mean, I think that the fact that it's so, this is something that's very hard to wrap our minds around, even though from a corruption angle, once you introduce that, it's pretty clear. Um, it's new. It's something like, also it's like surreal that these 19-year-olds, one who's called Big Balls, whose grandfather was a KGB spy in Washington, like, what is going on? So, I think a few weeks ago we were on here and I was like, we have to take a beat with certain things. But okay, so now we're weeks ahead, and it's true, it's mystifying that no one has stopped him. Some people think he would have to be physically restrained, like locked out of the buildings, the way that he locked our elected, that should have, when that happened, he should have been stopped. But of course, they're using each other. So nobody's wanting to stop him. So I think at some level, maybe people don't know what to do. He's the richest man in the whole world. That's a little intimidating to know what to do. Maybe they also thought that the Democratic Party would do something. I mean, there are protests around the country, but I think that the digital nature of this coup, with this very small group of digital shock troops who are like college student age, I think it's hard to know what to do. And it's something new. It truly is. Um, sadly, I finally got the formulation when I was writing my latest lucid piece. We are we have the dubious distinction of innovating the authoritarian playbook. Like, America is now a laboratory for a mix, for a regime, or whatever the heck we're going to call it, that's a mix of old things that are being done in Turkey and Hungary, etc., and then this new stuff. Um, and so it is hard to know what to do, legitimately.
I wanted to read you this quote um, that I think captures this. Let me see if I could find it. So this is from Alexis Madrigal, a great writer out in the
Hmm.
Bay Area. And he has a new book out, and he was summarizing this book. Um, and he says this is his writing. This last decade is best characterized by the Polish philosopher Zygmunt Bauman's idea of liquid modernity. Slightly paraphrased, he says we now live in times where anything can happen, but nothing can be done. And he's talking about Trump. He's talking about a pandemic. He's talking about chainsawing through the federal government. He says he's talking about housing costs, a hot land war in Europe, the destruction of Gaza, the emptying of downtowns. Anything can happen and nothing can be done.
Well, I don't
Um,
like that.
I just wonder how you react to that.
Well, it's yeah, Steve Brent. It's a terrible attitude. Exactly. If we, that's what I'm not calling Bauman authoritarian. I know his work. So, but that is what authoritarians want us to think,
No,
because
I'm not saying it's a true point, but I'm just wondering. It feels to me like what a lot of people feel right now.
yes, and that's psychologically different. That's the nature of psychological warfare, where they hit you. That's the nature of coups. um and I'm teaching a class on coups right now. They hit you hard at the very beginning, and then it's a fait accompli. In And so we had the equivalent. Again, they were ready, they planned. We had the equivalent of this from Trump, and then we also had this new thing that people were struggling to grasp, and they hit quickly. They moved methodically and quickly, these digital shock troops, from one place to another to capture our government. um, so yes, of course, it feels like nothing can be done. um, and but if we internalize that attitude, then we're done.
So
uh,
I wanted to read that quote to you, because I do think a lot of people feel it. In order to ask you, how do you fight that feeling? How do you refuse to give in to that feeling, drawing on all of your sense of history?
um, I think part of this might not be, it's like a precondition. You have to recognize what it is. That's why a lot of what I do, I know, I people see my face on the street, live stream or TV, and they're like, oh no, now I'm going to be terrified and depressed. So sorry. um but the first stage is recognizing what the heck is going on, and so we can effectively, know what it is, name it, so we can effectively oppose it. Um, and the second stage is also like taking care of yourself and not getting so swept up in panic and trying to do things. Sometimes it's good to step back and again take care of yourself, rest up. It's like retreating for a minute to be able to fight more effectively because we're all very tired and every day is like slapping us around with horrible news that we can't even have time um to digest, right? Especially things like Friday. It's like, as you said, it's like a major reset or a major revolution or whatever we're going to call it. So, um, I think if you're grounded in yourself and you're rested and you're understand and you've taken time to understand what's going on, then you can plan some kind of opposition. There are many things we could do. We can do economic boycotts. We can show up in larger numbers. We can show up at town halls. I mean, people think, well, oh, I'm just going to write to my congressman. They don't care anymore. But there are things we can do. The Musk stuff is challenging. It's really challenging because they're working behind the scenes and they're all protected. And he's a protected person. He's not a normal, even like a career representative of the GOP has like a normal house and this is the richest man on earth, so he's already got all those Putin style bunkers and jets. Hard to it's hard to you know what I'm saying, it's hard to
Yeah.
penetrate his consciousness.
Yeah. Does he have more houses or children? I've lost track.
Yeah, that whole thing where he's trying to just have as many offspring with his superior genes as possible. That's just really um
Yeah. Pretty
disturbing.
remarkable. I wanted to ask you some of our recurring themes about the opposition, the Democrats that you're seeing right now. I was on Morning Joe this morning and had an interaction with Senator Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin, who, of course, won in that state, even as Kamala Harris lost, and is someone who's shown that she can win in that environment. Um, and I asked her what I felt was a very straightforward question about, hey, a lot of Democrats feel undefended by your party and its leaders right now. Like, do you agree that, do you get that? And do you also think you need to figure out more concerted communication, centralizing it, whatever? And, I'll leave it to folks to answer this themselves. But I was sort of stunned by her answer in that, I mean, I'm a writer, like I pay a lot of attention to language. Like I could barely follow the answer that followed. I felt like I needed like a sentence diagramming chart. I mean, she's a very nice person, we had a nice rapport, but it was just like, what are you saying? And so then
What
I
did she
went back to,
say? What
well,
did
it
she
was like,
say?
well, we're on the floor and we're having, they're flooding the zone and we're doing this and we're having all nighters on the floor and we're having, our committees are looking at this and that. And it was as if I said, I mean, I came as close as you can on a television news show to being like, hey, me and lots of people feel so scared right now. Like, do you got us? You got
Mhm.
us?
Mhm.
You got us or you don't got us? And it was sort of someone like, okay, I hear your question. Allow me to read you page 36 of a report from the Brookings Institution in 2005. Right? It was just like,
Mhm. Mhm.
I I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong and she's right, and maybe most people are just worried about the price of eggs and don't care. But I don't know. Most people, in my estimation, watching this, and many people out in the country, feel incredibly preyed upon right now, and that we might be months, weeks, years, whatever it is, from losing the republic. And I'm like, hey, people feel that. Do you agree that people feel that? Do you see that? Just do you see that people feel that? B, is there something more concerted you could do? And then I gave her the specific example that people have raised about, you know, a central communicator, get a Pete Buttigieg, someone else to do daily briefings,
Exactly.
a shadow cabinet. Timothy Snyder's been talking about that, right? And I raised these things with her, and it was just like, no, we're pulling all nighters in the Senate. They're flooding the zone, and I couldn't even. It wasn't my show, so I got my two questions, and I kind of that was it. Um, but I just again, I hesitate to attribute all of this to the people doing it, because at some point in a system like this, there is another side that is supposed to provide counterweight and provide checks and balances. Our system is designed that way. That is where a lot of your safety comes from. And it just feels like that engine of the plane is not on, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, that's really helpful to hear. So we're starting to we're getting glitchy our video, but it's not it's the platform when all of you are sharing us with love. I think the when there's a lot of emojis, it makes it glitchy. Just so just
We're
saying.
inspiring too much love, Ruth. Too much love.
So it's as though, I mean, it's as though they're sticking to an old institutionalist playbook that is not up to it's not up to the task of dealing with this new level of threat. And even the older, more classical stuff that Trump's doing, which he said very clearly he was going to do, um, and is being done elsewhere, so they can just read the world news and say, I'm sure they know what's been done elsewhere. Even that is new for America, and so it's as though some of them are, even though they went through January 6th, like nobody should have any illusions after January 6th what these people are capable of. But they can't modernize. One thing, Ananda, is thinking, which you think about this too, and you interview people. When you look at the US comparatively, we've only got these two giant parties. And it means that the Democratic as well as the Republican Party, they're like these fossilized entities. And Trump was able to shake up the Republican Party so that he imposed messaging discipline, including, like, and if you transgressed and you said the wrong thing, like on when Ted Cruz said the wrong thing about January 6th, he said it was domestic terrorism. He got hauled on to Fox News by Tucker Carlson and berated, and you could see the fear in his eyes. Tucker Carlson didn't give a shit that he was a senator. He just cared about messaging discipline. So we don't want in the Democratic Party an authoritarian style discipline or any of those enforcers, but it's like a fossilized dinosaur type structure that is not able to change and be flexible when there's a crisis. That's what I'm trying to get to. And so I think that experience you had with someone who knows how to win, and so is far more um, flexible and modern, we could say, than a lot of others. It's like they've reached the limits of their, I don't know, the party is like hampering them. And so pulling all nighters, that's the old school. I don't know, but it's
And you do,
completely,
and people in the chat are bringing up examples. It's true. Bernie does sound different right now. Bernie Sanders,
yeah,
her Senate colleague. Chris Murphy seems
he's
like he watched the
fantastic.
movie Bulworth and is
Yeah,
is like just like if he doesn't start rapping in the next week,
yeah.
on top of a car driving around, I'm going to be shocked. So that we see it. Jasmine Crockett has been outstanding, just telling
She's
Elon Musk to
amazing.
fuck off on the Capitol steps.
Yeah, yeah.
So we have those individuals, but I mean, it's sort of like you're in academia, right? You might have some professors who are different. You're a professor, for example, who is different in terms of you do serious scholarship and you also connect to the world. But I think you'd agree that academia in general uh, discourages a lot of people like you
Oh,
connecting to the world
yes.
in this
Oh,
way, right? So
absolutely.
so
It
the fact that you exist does not mean that there's not a problem, right? Your existence is not evidence that the problem is being solved. You're an exception, and we're grateful for the exception. But just to stick with that example, academia in general has a problem of not allowing people to connect to the public and be out there. And it's not unrelated to the Democratic Party's problem. I think it comes from the same
Yeah.
place of
Yeah.
not wanting to be overexposed, not tacky, wanting to be kind of careful and correct and sober. And it was just so interesting. It's like a clearly very, very nice person I was sitting next to, very kind, decent Midwestern person who, again, has won elections, and I've never won anything, and I probably would never win anything. But just gosh, like if you can't feel in your gut right now that people just want you to step up and fight. And by the way, I don't know, like stepping up and fighting feels like a lot easier thing to do than like understanding how Medicaid works. Like it's not hard if you've been a parent or a spouse or a child of someone, like you've probably had to fight for someone in your life. This is a pretty natural
Yeah.
human thing. And the fact that it is so unnatural to so many of these people seems wild.
Also, we do, some of them or many of them are receiving threats, and so that on that basis they're trying to, but lots of people are receiving threats and they're speaking out too, and there is a certain level of responsibility that comes with being an elected official at times of crisis. And so the party, if they continue on this path and just a few people are really speaking out with the gravity and visibility that we need, that's going to have electoral consequences. Maybe that's the way to get through to them, because there will be electoral consequences if millions of people feel abandoned. And even the fact that I was a huge fan of Kamala in the election, but where is she? Apparently, and again, she could have a zillion reasons for needing to have a low profile. And then I saw a picture of her that her first public appearance was at something for Vogue magazine, and she deserves to go to Vogue magazine events, but the fact that the people who were so beloved and so visible right before the election are not visible now, unless I'm in error and she's been out there. And
Well,
Tim
let's just
Walz,
generalize
doesn't have to
it.
doesn't
Tim
have to be
Walz,
just
but
him.
I mean,
Yeah.
people have been asking
Yeah.
us, Barack Obama,
That's what I mean.
like
All of
where
these people,
I
where
mean,
are they?
I think I speak for every single person on this live when I say that we have all been asked to sign these people's birthday card, like birthday card. At some point, we've all been asked for $5 by these people. At some point, we've all received Spotify playlists from them or things like that that we're asked to share. We've all been asked to watch like content they create as part of their business. We've all been asked to buy their books. We've been asked to donate to their libraries. Um, I haven't done a lot of those things that I just mentioned, but I think a lot of people have done those things. Um, and I don't know. Does anyone on here, you can respond in the chat, who has dutifully done those things and sent that money and signed those birthday cards? Do any of you, tell me if I'm wrong, do any of you feel like any of those people are here for you right now? I mean, this is the most extraordinary mass ghosting
Yes, that's a good way.
imaginable.
That's a good way. And I can tell you that people have a long memory when democracy is lost. And like the case studies that I've gone into depth to see what was happening during the crisis and who spoke out. People remember who spoke out and who disappeared. And it's just very sad that the people who are most respected and beloved are largely being silent when we have this giant crisis where even from, and I understand some of them are now connected to Silicon Valley, and so that's difficult. But if this is what courage is, you have to stand up for the country is being. We've got a 1-2 punch here. We have Musk stealing all our data, and God knows doing what with it, and taking over our bureaucracies digitally. locking out people, and then we have the Oval Office becoming a Putin friendly place. This is a crisis of immense gravity, and really um, never seen before, these two things together. And people are gone. They're not helping us. So of course we all feel abandoned, but people will have a long memory when it comes to elections. And I think that's the thing to communicate to the Democratic Party and the consultants, that they're going to pay for this.
Yeah, I'll
Maybe
tell
they're
you
not.
an anecdote. I can't. This is not a fact checked anecdote, but it's something that happened to me when I lived for a summer in Romania when I was in college and I was doing a research project, doing interviews with people. Um, and I was driving around one day with a taxi driver, and like we just couldn't find. Repeatedly, this kept happening. Where like the street name that you were supposed to go to, you couldn't quite find it on the street, or you'd go to it, but it'd be a different street name. It was very chaotic and confusing in Bucharest. Um, and I asked this taxi driver once, like, "What's going on? Like, why are these addresses always out of date?" And this is obviously pre cell phone. And he said, "Well, he said, the historians keep digging through the archives of what happened in the middle of the 20th century, and they keep finding out new information about what the people who these streets are named after, what they
Hmm.
really did. And sometimes someone goes from good to bad based on what's found in the archives. Sometimes they go from bad to good based on what's found in the archives. But these historians, they keep digging, and we have to keep changing the street names, which I thought was a
Interesting.
hilarious and
I,
also chilling situation, and we're
yeah.
going to be up for some serious street name changing. Okay, I want to, in the last few minutes we have, I want to land on what people can do because a lot of people are asking this, and I think it's important. And it's important for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think we agree that while there should be a Democratic Party opposition that is concerted and serious and focused, there isn't right now, and there may not be for some time to come. I think we also agree that what's happening right now is, existential level threat, and just fundamental. America is being kind of pivoted into the ugliest incarnation of itself, and then kind of hard launched into the world as this country that no longer cares about any other country, no longer cares about democracy, and may well be doing the bidding of the Kremlin. Um, it seems to me, and I've said this before, and you've said it before, that the only thing that we still have and that still works is people, and what
Hmm.
people are willing to stand up for, willing to stand up against, willing to do, willing to resist, um, and essentially what people are willing to allow the meaning of their country to be.
Hmm.
Um, and so I want you to reflect on where you think we are with that. We've seen these town halls, still relatively small scale, but it does feel like people are rising up in different forms. Where do you think we are on the arc of movement building? And what advice do you have at this moment for people to step up?
Yeah, I can't answer fully about the movement building because I'm not somebody who does that, and I don't know what is being done. Um, Maybe there. I mean, ideally, what should be done is, major summits going on to connect civil society groups, progressive faith groups, because I feel that faith and religion is going to be, because of the centrality of Christian nationalism and the way that like Lutherans were being attacked by Musk. I mean, there's like a lot of stuff going on, that we need a cross-based, secular and religious labor. um you know we need to build this, and we need to build it now. So that's something. Where we are in it, I can't say, but that's what needs to be done. Also, just use this opportunity. We're being handed amazing opportunities for messaging, and that goes back to the frustration of, why not just have Pete Buttigieg 24/7 out there, and a couple of others, but that these people are just about greed and selling out the country, and some of them are traitors probably. And this gives us an opportunity to have a new kind of emphasis on values, on decency, on things that probably a lot of people who didn't vote, or and maybe as they come to learn more, they'll be disturbed. You know, decency, justice, um, solidarity for others. Like that's what I would hope we could have. Ideally, a rebirth of the Democratic Party. I'm again, we're not. It some seems like neither of us are particularly. A lot of people would have to get out of the way for that to happen. But they're handing us with the level of the corruption and and the malfeasance in general and incompetence is handing us opportunities that we need to use.
Um, what do you think is the when I often get this question from people, from ink readers, about the people they know who are either on the right or even just middle of the road or kind of apolitical in their own life, their adult siblings, neighbors. What do they say in this moment? Um, do you have a sense, given the pantheon of things that are going on right now in these movements historically, when you had kind of people to people persuasion of that kind happening, um, and you have this kind of polarization, and it's very, very difficult. Do you have any advice for people on how to start, how to broach those conversations in ways that don't shut the door immediately, that don't shut people down? How do you get in there to be able to have that conversation over time?
Yeah, over time is the optimal thing. It is we just as we have just as Democrats, officials, etc., consultants. I just said that they're being handed a lot of golden opportunities. So are we for opening dialogue with people who maybe are not very easily reachable, because this is not what they voted for. um, and the things they voted for are not being done, and all kinds of other things are being done. I think it's important to you know to return to like the exam. A lot of people have grandparents or whatever who fought in World War II uh, against the fascists. Like to go back to certain periods in history, and also the civil rights movement, and kind of because a lot of successful resistance movements, like even in Poland where they took back their country from far right government in 2023, they made it about the present and the future, but they also had present there at their rallies Lech Walesa, who was Solidarność. You have to like remind people that we have this other heritage. It's not all the Ku Klux Klan and now the Proud Boys. We have this other heritage and you can use that in conversation with people. And then I think Musk gives people, very few people are, I mean, there are people who are going to be, wow, he wants to go to space and they'll be enamored of him. But um, I think many more will come to feel he's just, they can't relate to him, and the chainsaw, and he could hardly speak at CPAC. He's clearly like on drugs or something. This is not what people voted for. They didn't vote for him at all. So that's an opening too.
I've never done this before, but with your indulgence, Ruth, I just wanted to read something from an ink post I did yesterday that is about this kind of these different American spirits and which heritage we go with. The American spirit is not a fixed quantity, but rather a contest between competing spirits. There is a generous spirit and a cruel one, a big heart and a small one, an earnestness and a cynicism, a forward looking spirit and a spirit consumed with nostalgia and stewing in resentment. There is the America of abolition and the America of slavery, the America of Reconstruction and the America of redemption, the America of civil rights and the America of the Klan, the America built of immigrants and the America of family separation, the America that endlessly renews itself and the America that clings, the America of inconvenient ideals and the America of mercenary calculation, the America of principles worth sacrificing for, and the America that only knows and pursues raw power and domination. And I
Hmm.
thanks for your indulgence in reading that aloud, because to me, what is actually empowering in this moment is that we have a choice about which of those countries we are. And at some level, even though there is this rampage from the top,
Mhm.
I understand it in many ways as something that has bubbled up from what we've allowed ourselves to become as a society. I don't actually think Donald Trump is such a brilliant genius that he would have risen in any era, in any time, in any situation. I
No.
think he rose in this time. And I think
Mhm.
he arose in this time that this kind of giant boil on our body has arisen because of the conditions inside our body, because of the
Mhm.
health of our body politic. And I think one source of empowerment for me is thinking about we don't have necessarily all the leverage on that boil that we'd like to, but we do have leverage on the health of the body politic, on the way our companies operate, the way our neighborhoods are, the way our civic relationships are. That ill health we all participate in, whether we like it or not. That media environment, that social media culture, we participate in the kind of health of the body politic that has made him possible and made him a reflection of what in many ways we've allowed ourselves to become, and we have power there to withdraw that
Mhm.
kind of that kind of behavior. I know we got to go. Tell me what is coming up on Lucid, your incredible Substack newsletter that we should be looking forward to.
And thank you for that. And it's interesting, Anand. That's why these conversations with you are so great. I hadn't read your piece yet, uh, and we ended up, thinking in similar ways, right? We are at a crossroads as a nation, and we have we always have a choice. And we always have the opportunity to act on that choice and use our agency, even though authoritarians want us to feel that we don't have any agency, or it's too the price of speaking out or acting is too great. But that's not where we are. We have room, to be like the people in Vermont and the die-in at the Capitol. We have room, and we have to do that now. So Lucid, I published a piece on the ways that the U.S. will likely collaborate with Russia, and that was yesterday. And then on Wednesday, I have coming up a piece about the damaged and disturbed people who are now at the top and trying to make a mockery of U.S. government, and really make a mockery of the U.S. And an analysis of that crazy picture at Blair House with Modi and Musk, with the kids seeing the equivalent of government officials. So that's what's coming up.
I love that. I want to, given that all of that is coming up, I want to invite folks who are not already to subscribe to Lucid. I think, tell me in the chat if this is true, because I've actually never seen it because I'm on this end of it. Is there a button there? Are there buttons there for Lucid and for the Ink? If there are, smash those subscribe buttons, and it will allow you to get these things in the future. Um, and this we didn't get to talk about it much today, the media, but a big part of this story is also what reality the media is willing to present,
Yeah,
what narratives are presented and what are not, whether we are being told stories about our agency or not. And I think you and I are both committed to trying to build this different kind of media that does not demoralize people but actually lets them know. So subscribe to Lucid if you're an Ink person coming at this. Subscribe to the Ink if you're a Lucid person coming at this. We need people to support this new kind of media and not just be pissy at the old kind of media.
sure.
And we're going to keep doing everything we are doing to make a case for a different kind of American future. Ruth, I'm always so grateful every time we get to talk.
Thank you. It's great. I'm so glad we do this. And thanks to everybody for coming. It's great. Thank you. And stay well,
Thank you.
everybody.
All right. Have a
Bye.
good week, everybody. Bye.
Bye.